But for now, good evening to all you far-right Nazi bigots who could soon be getting a knock at the door from the government's counter-terrorism intervention scheme for being concerned about the fast-changing identity of your country. Yes, that's right. It's been revealed that the government's Prevent programme may consider anyone who's worried about uncontrolled mass migration and the idea that Western culture is under threat through a lack of integration is now a right-wing terrorist. Cultural nationalism is now a bad thing, apparently. Caring about the direction of travel of your birthland is terrorism. Well, of course not. It's obvious that that's the case. Any idiot can see that. But this is the latest example of a government that I feel is gaslighting its own people into obedience and submission. Well, let me tell you something tonight. It's not going to work because although they think British people are stupid, I can absolutely assure you they're not. Nobody buys this. Caring about the systematic racist rape of English schoolgirls by Pakistani rape gangs isn't a far-right bandwagon, as the Prime Minister said earlier this year. Wanting to scrap the ECHR so we can deport criminal illegal migrants is not akin to Nazi Germany, as the PM's mate and Attorney General Lord Hermer said earlier this month. And being alarmed at the erosion of British identity and culture at the hands of mass immigration is not terrorism. I'll tell you what terrorism is. Terrorism is the Manchester Arena bombing, where dozens of little schoolgirls were slaughtered by a scumbag who repaid the nation that gave him and his family safety by committing mass murder. Terrorism is the Islamic State sympathiser who stabbed the much-loved late MP Sir David Amess to death. Terrorism is the Islamist scumbag who mowed people down on Westminster Bridge, then stabbed PC Keith Palmer to death. Terrorism is the Borough Market attack where 5 innocent people were killed by Islamists, including this young lady from Australia, Sarah Zeleniak, who I watched bleed to death on the pavement as terrorists ran riot across London Bridge. There she is on your screen. I'll never forget seeing Sarah that night. I'll never forget her injury, what she was wearing, the way she was positioned, what was going through my mind at the time, and I still often think about her now. One of her killers, by the way, was part of the very Prevent programme that now considers you at home a terrorist. In fact, if there's anyone being terrorised here, it's the good, honest, hard-working people of this country who have been lied to, manipulated, coerced, controlled and abused by governments and political leaders for decades. The truth of the matter is that the bulk of MI5's terror watch list is made up of 40,000 or so jihadis. I'm not saying far-right extremism doesn't exist, of course not, but being concerned about the dark path your own country is being dragged down is not it. Do not let these people brainwash you into thinking you're the bad person. You're not. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. The journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee, the former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Torbett. Good evening, panel.
Good evening.
Welcome along. Hope you've had a pleasant day. Linda, ladies first. What did you make of this extraordinary revelation that the Home Office now considers anybody who's got slight concern about the fast-paced changing identity of the country as a right-wing terrorist?
It's clearly a little bit delusional, but let's face it, Prevent has never really showered itself in glory since it was first introduced. So, I mean, there have been many infringements that we know about where Prevent hasn't worked, and I think that this is another development which will lead to a fracture in its effectiveness. I think that's what's going to happen. And I think that you can't, as you said, gaslight people into thinking they might be part of some kind of terrorism plan, when clearly there is a huge amount of concern out there in society today which is being ignored by the current government. They've got natural concerns about what is happening here, and they shouldn't be turned into pseudo-terrorists.
I would say as well, I don't think it's just a Labour thing. It happened under the previous governments as well. So,
of course, yeah.
Matthew Torbett, what's your take on this? I mean, I saw this and I was flabbergasted. It comes weeks, of course, after Lord Hermer kind of clumsily, I mean, he said it was clumsy, but he wrote the speech and he spent 2 hours writing it, calling people who want to scrap the ECHR as Nazis or, you know, very close to that kind of rhetoric anyway. Keir Starmer in January saying that the grooming gang scandal was a right-wing bandwagon, calling for an inquiry. What's your take on all this?
Well, I think the less said about Lord Hermer, the better. I think the government would be, you know, far better without people like that involved. I think to give it the nuance that it probably deserves, rather than potentially hiding behind the sofa and getting a bit too worried, the Home Office is suggesting that concerns over immigration are hijacked or being hijacked by terrorist ideology. Now, what that means is you're totally entitled, from the way I see it, you're totally entitled to have concerns. You're totally entitled to potentially be worried about the country that you see maybe changing at a pace that you're not quite comfortable with. But those concerns can be exploited by those on the fringe right and the real
who are they talking about?
extremists.
I mean, who's hijacking it?
I think, well...
Because I don't see that. I just see ordinary, hard-working British people concerned about the country they love and speaking up about it. I mean, to be quite fair, lots of people are speaking up far too late and too tamely, but we are eventually starting to speak up about it.
I think it's right to be concerned about people coming into this country via small boats who we don't know who they are because they're chucking passports and whatever into the channel. I think if you're concerned about immigration and your area changing because of the types of people that are living there, I think you're one step or a few steps away from somebody with nefarious ideas on the internet saying that they're all coming to take over and all this other sort.
OK. Is this terrorism? The Telegraph, the Daily Telegraph today, published a story saying that in 72 schools, no white British pupils are recorded. In 454 schools, they make up less than 2% of the student body. Is that article in a national newspaper walking on the lines of terrorism? Right-wing terrorism? Because that's the kind of thing that people who are reading this information from Prevent today are going to think they're chucked into.
I wouldn't say it's terrorism. I think that would be silly. I think...
Thank you for clarifying.
It could be, yeah, no, I think maybe in this day and age it needs to be. I think to hide data behind potential inflammatory headlines is potentially what that is. I think, You
think that's inflammatory?
Yeah, I think...
OK. Peter Blakes, do you think that's inflammatory?
Do I not get to explain
sorry,
why?
go on. Yeah, go
I mean,
on.
my kids won't be white British, and therefore I'm not concerned about the impact they may have on people's schooling because I will raise them to be good, upstanding members of society. Also, the people that tend to be not white in this country tend to be second or third generation immigrants. So the idea that they're not British, when I think statistics show 80% of them consider themselves British, is therefore giving a bit more of the fuller story than the idea that everybody...
So can I ask, would you say that about Japanese people? If somebody moved to Japan, if I moved to Japan today and I was there for however long I need to be to get a passport and citizenship, does that make me Japanese?
Well, the Japanese...
If you're born in this country...
Well, I know the Japanese wouldn't think so.
Well, if your kids were born there, they'd have every right to be Japanese, yeah.
So we're totally obliterating the idea of ethnicity and cultural heritage. It's all about paperwork now, is it?
No, but there's a legal framework which would suggest that, yes.
Right. Peter, what's your take on all this?
Well, quite frankly, I find it ludicrous that Matthew sits there and tries to defend the indefensible and uses the word nuance. Just for purposes of clarity here, I have the government Prevent page on my phone, OK? And you tell me where there's any nuance. Under the title, Extreme Right-Wing Terrorist Ideology, under that headline, anybody that thinks Western culture is under threat from mass migration and a lack of integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups is a terrorist. Tell me where the nuance is.
Extreme far-right terrorist ideology would come under things like the Great Replacement theory. I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, that's what we're talking about. That is the exact wording, the exact lift from the government Prevent programme that we're discussing. You tell me where the nuance is.
I've just told you. I would define that differently.
There isn't any. Everything that Ben said is absolutely bang on. Everything that you've said is trying to excuse the inexcusable.
That there are several bullet points, because I read them this morning, and that's the top one. Isn't it saying that actually people who show that tendency should be watched and are potentially a danger? It doesn't say they're specifically terrorists, does it?
Ben?
Just to be clear.
When we share a cell, I've got to tell you, I snore like a rhino, mate, so I'm getting my apology in now.
That's all right. You can call me Ben Jemima any day of the week, Peter, in a cell block. There we go. Great start. Thank you, panel. Right. Let us know what you think on that. gbnews.com/you'll say lots of you rightly concerned about what the Home Office are pumping out. I don't think it's the end of the story.